We welcome you to an interview with three of Ralph Swede Christiansen's grandchildren, Kathy Stresman, Gayle Kremer, and Kristine Jaeger. They talk about their grandfather Swede, who was a captain in the Milwaukee Fire Department. Upon retirement, he and his wife Gertie moved to their new home in Manitowish Waters and were very content on Alder Lake. After Gertie passed away, Swede married June and became a co-owner of the Broken Knuckle Beer Bar. This interview was conducted by Krans and Janelle Kohl of the Manitowish Waters Historical Society on October 9th of 2020.
I'm Kay Krans, and I work with the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. And we have three ladies here today who want to tell the history of Swede Christiansen, who was a business owner and homeowner in Manitowish Waters. What's really interesting is Kathy Stresman, who is in the middle of your picture, called the library requesting to find out where she could find out where Swede's land was. And I think Janelle then passed that on to Barb Bartling, who passed it on to me. And luckily I was a neighbor of Swede Christiansen, and Kathy and I talked, and we decided that she and her sisters would come up one day and we'd take a tour of the old sites that involved their grandfather. Mm-hmm. So we're very happy to be able to interview the ladies today. So let's start with Gayle. Would you tell us your name, when and where you were born?
My name is Gayle Kremer. I was born in Rhinelander in 1956, February of 1956.
And I am Kathy Stresman, and I was born at St. Mary's in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, December of 53.
I'm Kris Jaeger, and I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in August of 1959.
So, tell us how Manitowish Waters became an important place for your family.
Well, that's a really interesting question because we're people of the North, so on both sides of our family, they like fishing, they like the woods. My grandpa was a captain in the fire department in Milwaukee who could retire after 30 years. So when he was 50 years old, he came up here to buy some land. Actually, he bought it in his 40s. But we don't know how he found out about Manitowish Waters or, what was the draw to relocate here.
But we do know that he loved to fish.
Yes.
And this was a fishing mecca.
Yes, exactly.
So would you tell us his full name and his nickname and tell us about that?
Sure. I don't know his middle name, but when he was born, it was Rolf, R-O-L-F, because he was born in Norway in 1902. And he and his mom, other family members came over, but he and his mom came over in 2004 through Ellis Island, and they changed his name to Ralph with R-A-L-P-H. So his real name is Ralph Christiansen. Of course, they changed the pronunciation then when they came through as well. And his friends in Milwaukee, either in the Masons or in the fire department, named him Swede because they knew he was Scandinavian and a new immigrant.
Can you tell us a little bit about his career as a firefighter in Milwaukee?
I can. A little bit what I know. I think he joined at about age 20. He went through 8th grade, so I don't know what he did until 20. But when he turned 20 years old, he got a job as a firefighter, and then he worked his way up to captain, which is what he retired as. And I am quite sure he was at the house on 3rd and Florida. So that would be close to the lakefront on the south side of Milwaukee. He may have been at another house, but that's the one that I know of.
Do you ever remember any stories about fires he was involved with fighting? Or?
Oh gosh,
No, because by the time we would have been old enough, he lived up here and we saw them
because he
very
retired at 50,
regularly.
so
Yeah.
he's quite young when he retired.
And when did he get married in there?
He got married when he was 25. So I don't know the year.
I think his middle name is on that birth certificate of mom's.
Oh, we
out
could
there.
fill them in on that then too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 25, and my grandma was around 23 when he got married in Milwaukee.
And what was her maiden name and her name?
Her name was Gertrude Klatt, Klatt.
And how many children did they have?
They only had one, our mom,
And her name?
Ellen.
Ellen Klott.
Ellen Christiansen.
Ellen Christiansen. Okay. And what year was she born?
1930.
Let's see. And so, did your mother ever tell you any memories about growing up in Milwaukee?
Yeah. She and her mom were very close. I don't know if firefighters are the same right today, but Grandpa would work 24 hours off, 24 hours on, and on the on days when he was working, then she and her mom did a lot of things. They would go downtown, they would eat at the Chinese restaurant, they would go to some shows, at those live shows that they used to have. That's what we remember hearing about her growing up. Grandma and Grandpa, so Ralph and Gertrude, they took in a boarder in Milwaukee from Croatia, to the best of my knowledge. It's on Ancestry.com as Yugoslavia, but that may have not been the truth, or it may have been, So he lived in the house with them the whole time she was growing up, and we were in contact with him as young kids. He would come over to our house. At that time, we lived 126th in Greenfield. My mom grew up on 37th in Greenfield. So we've heard things about him. And then there would not much about family get-togethers on the Norwegian side. They did it, but there weren't many. No, there was a grandma that came over, the mom, and then Swede, and then there was two other Norwegian brothers that came over
Before they came. Before Grandma and
Grandpa came over.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were here
They
already.
came first.
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't know if they sponsored them or whatever they did back then to
Okay.
get Grandma and Grandpa.
See, I knew they knew stuff.
Great grandma.
And one of those brothers stayed in Milwaukee, and so my mom, knew him as her uncle, and they interacted. But one took off and relocated in the Scandinavian communities of Washington, state of Washington, someplace. That's all we kind of know.
We didn't know any
about
of
them. She has memories of Norwegians being a lot of fun when they got together.
Oh.
So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Did they speak? Did you ever know if your grandfather spoke Norwegian?
I'm sure
as
he did.
as an adult.
As an adult.
It would have only been if he and our great
Grandma.
grandma got together, because those were the only two that Norwegian. But
Yeah.
we knew he had to have known it because
He
our
was
great
two.
grandma, he was 2 when he came over, and our grandma would speak it regularly, and
All
we'd
the time.
say, "What are you saying, Grandma?"
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom would translate for her.
She
'cause
knew
she knew enough of
pieces,
it to
right?
pick up the words. And
Yeah.
So do you remember foods that were really important?
Oh, yeah.
Lefse.
Yeah, we didn't know it was
Some
cool
buckles,
to be
yeah.
Scandinavian living in Milwaukee, because that was mostly German Polish. And then when we went to school in Minnesota, we found out, it's kind of cool to be
I know
Norwegian,
now how to
right?
make lefse.
Yes, yeah. So.
Strange cheeses.
Oh,
Yeah, the brown cheese.
That's giost.
Yeah.
Something.
Okay.
Cookies, dessert.
Sandkaka.
Sandbuckles. Kroomkaka, julekaka, and lefse.
And head cheese.
Oh,
And
no.
head cheese.
Not gonna do it. Yeah.
Did you find your mother made you things
No,
herself?
no.
No! That was our great grandma.
Great grandmother.
Who
Yeah.
lived till she was 96. So
Yeah,
we
so
were
we had a long time
older
with her.
teens or young adults.
Yeah.
So she was really more like our grandma.
Yeah,
To us.
because Gertrude, Ralph's wife,
Wife.
passed away when she was 52.
Too.
So I never met her. She died the year before I was
And
born.
I was only 2. I have a memory out at the lake, and that's it. Of
Yeah,
her.
and I have more memories because I was like 4.5 or something.
Do you know what illness took her?
Yes,
She
cerebral
stroked.
hemorrhage?
Yeah, she had a cerebral hemorrhage, yeah.
Mom had taken her to, I don't know the reason, was it just a checkup? I'm not sure. But my folks lived, where did they live at that time? Crescent Lake in Rhinelander, outside off of 8. And Swede would bring her over to stay with my mom and dad for a few days at a time. And Mom took her for a checkup, or I don't know
Why she was at the
but they were at
doctor's
St. Mary's in Rhinelander, and they both went into, this is a sad part,
Yeah.
they both went into separate stalls to go to the bathroom, and my grandma had a cerebral hemorrhage, and she died.
Right there.
Right there.
Right there.
Mom
That
was
so
26
sad.
years old.
26 years old,
Yeah.
only child, so that was really hard on her.
And she was very close to her mom, you know, because Grandpa was away for
Yeah.
Yeah,
hours at a time.
yeah.
Very sad.
Yeah.
So tell us about any memories you have when Gertie and Swede moved here. Or
This is what we know. Grandpa retired. They had bought the land in 46. We think it had a building already on it, a cottage. They bought it in 46 from the best of our knowledge. And then my parents got married in 50. So in 50, they moved up here. And my mom and dad, we don't know if, we were talking about this in the car, I don't know if they rented the house on 37th Street or if Grandma and Grandpa just let them live there. I'm thinking
Down in
that's
Milwaukee.
probably
Down in
it.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, off of Greenfield. Because that's when Mom and Dad were going to UW Milwaukee or State Teachers College. So
Then they moved up here and Dad got a teaching job.
in 52.
Yeah.
So, but we do know there was trips, our parents came back and forth a few times because they helped, my dad helped with the building and the remodeling of the cottage into a full-time home.
And I don't remember any of that. You were
No,
even born
no,
initially
I
when
wasn't,
they started.
right,
Yeah, right.
no.
I
They-
remember, like I say, I have one memory because I was 2 when Grandma died. So I had to have been a year and a half because I have a picture and I remember sitting outside next to the house under the wash poles with Grandma and Mom and they were hanging wash. So I had to have been really young
Yeah.
at that point. The other memories of the house on the lake there were we would come up to Eagle River every year for a vacation and of course we'd come over and visit Grandpa and
Yeah.
June, who was his wife then
Second
at
wife,
that point. And we'd come visit, spend a little time, and that was about it.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm trying to think before that. Yeah, because when we were living up here before Chris was born, then, you know, there'd be weekends that we would come to the lake here in Manitowish Waters. And I remember staying up late with Grandma and Mom watching TV. So that, talk about early TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. Because
I don't
we
remember
had a
that.
TV too, I remember, in Rhinelander. And so I remember those, and then Dad and Grandpa would go out fishing. They tended to go to bed earlier because they had been out, you know, for a lot of the day fishing. I remember getting up and having breakfast in that house, and then, like you have the memory outside of the wash line, she had a strawberry patch. And so I just remember it being warm and going out there in the mornings and picking strawberries for breakfast. So,
And about where was his place located? Which lake and like what road? Down what road?
Alder
Alder
Lake,
Circle.
right?
Alder Lake and Alder Circle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we stopped there today, and there's
Kay took us there.
no remains of the house, but we can envision the house on that property down to the lake because I have vague memories of that.
Is there a house right now on the
Oh, yeah.
property? Is it
It's a
replaced?
huge house.
Yeah, it could be 4 houses.
Do you know who lives there or the name? Okay, or the neighbor?
Well, it's like 3 houses down from where my parents had their cottage.
That's what really helped us
Figure it
connect
out,
and
yeah.
figure this out was Kay, because
She
before
lived
that I
in
was
the area, yeah.
trying to figure things out and couldn't.
And think if this would have been a couple years down the road, what people would still be around that would remember Swede?
Yeah.
or, you know,
Listen,
those kinds of things.
I called the county. That's how this started. I called the county office and I said, I'm trying to look for my grandparents' land. I don't know where to start. This is all that I know. And the lady goes, wait, just a minute. And then she turns to somebody, and I forgot to get the name, turns to somebody and says, hey, do you know where Swede Christiansen lived? And he goes, yeah, he was down there on Alder Lake by the river. And I'm like, what in the world? That was crazy.
Well,
That was
and you
just
think
so
of how
crazy.
young those people, you know,
Yeah.
with those memories at this point had to have been to remember that. Because Grandpa Swede died in 1972. So that's a lot of years
Yeah.
Since
that
then.
since he's been gone from
Yeah.
that property.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty crazy.
Do you know what? Did he stay up here year round?
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
He,
He never went back to Milwaukee to
Oh, he
live.
won't tell him about the bar he owned.
You mean
Well,
up here?
Up here, when he lived up here.
Yeah, when he married June, I think she owned the Broken Knuckle.
Oh, I haven't heard of the Broken.
Well,
Oh,
it's
older
not
people
anymore.
have. You're
She's
too
too
young.
young.
Too young.
We saw John McFarland this morning. I said, John, do you remember the Broken Knuckle Beer Bar? And he goes, do I ever?
It's so funny, isn't it? Yeah.
And I
So
have memory of that.
So
Right.
you think June owned that, and then
Yes.
that's how Grandpa got
yes,
into work.
but I don't know how they met or
Any of that.
we think
Yeah.
they got married still in 19. Grandma died in February of 58. I'm sure they were married by 1959.
And her last maiden name?
I don't
We
know.
don't know.
I have no idea.
But she's from Milwaukee.
No, June was
It's
from up here.
From up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
I don't know what her. We'd have to try and probably find an obituary and see
Yeah.
if a maiden name was in
Because she
there.
died in 72 also.
Also.
She just died 6 months after Grandpa.
Yeah.
And then the house on Alder Lake went to her son. He was inherited by him, and I don't know that name. Like
No.
I say, we could probably search obituaries, right?
Yeah.
To find June.
But how do you find that with just a first name? I don't know.
Well, you would search it by Christensen, and it should have
Oh, yeah.
maiden name in the obituary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yep.
So, what knowledge did you have of the Broken Knuckle Beer Bar?
Well, you want to talk about that because you have more memories of going
I
there.
just remember, you have pictures, snapshots in your head of going in the front door, and June was sitting on one of the stools there,
Right.
and then we were just chatting with with Grandpa for just a little while, and then we walked out. That's the only memory I
and
have.
mine is just we were there. Nobody else was around.
Nobody was
Right.
there when I was
I
there
think
either.
Grandpa was just showing us
Yeah.
around the place, and I remember it being a bar and a
It
restaurant.
could have been the same time, Gail.
Could have been,
That-
yeah. And it's not like we visited there every time we came up, so maybe it was early on when they got married that we were up there seeing it. I don't
Yeah.
remember then. I wouldn't have even remembered the name except for Miss.
I did.
No, I didn't remember that
Oh.
name.
I
Either Kate
remember-
told me
no,
or
I remembered the
you
name.
you did.
Because
That's
Kathy
right.
goes,
How do
I
you
think you're
remember
right.
that?
I didn't remember that.
So it was called the Broken Knuckle. And then underneath it said, just a joint.
there you go.
That
There you
is
go.
so clever.
So clever.
And it was located on the corner of Bakken Road and Highway 51. And it was a very, very popular place for teenagers in the 50s and 60s. Late 50s and probably through the early 70s.
Because the drinking age was 18.
The drinking
and it
age,
was
when
a
the drinking
beer
age
bar.
was 18,
Yep.
and the skeeter water ski club kids hung out there because, you know, that group would socialize as a group, not necessarily teenagers dating.
Yeah.
And you met there, and if you were under 18, the restaurant side was available to you to have milkshakes and hamburgers or whatever. And then the bar side was separated, but it was separated by a half wall so that you could look over and visit with the people that were on the 18 side.
Yeah.
And it was all knotty pine inside. It was very cute. It was,
Yep,
it was
it
very
was.
cute. And Dan at the sports shop and his significant other lived there now, and they turned it into a house.
So you wouldn't even know by looking at it that
No.
it was, used to be
That
a
it
bar.
was, yeah.
Right.
Oh, so it's right on Highway 51,
Yep.
Yep.
751,
Yep.
and Bakken Road, that corner.
Right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
yeah. And when we pulled in today, it's like, oh, I remember this drive, and
Yeah.
you remember,
The
granted you're
angle.
looking at a house, but
Yeah.
the setting looked familiar.
Same with the lake,
Yeah.
the driveway.
Yeah.
So your grandpa really kept himself busy.
Yeah.
during his
Yes.
retirement.
Well, and what Kay was saying is, it didn't open until probably later in the day, so he could be out doing his fishing and whatever during the day at the lake, and then go man the bar at nighttime.
Do you remember the temperament of your grandpa?
There
That's
wasn't
a
a lot.
hard question.
There wasn't a lot of connection
Yeah.
between, and we were kind of
Emotional.
peripheral
Yeah.
to him, I would say.
He was always,
Yeah.
he wasn't the come sit on my lap loving kind
Yeah.
of grandfather, but he certainly was very kind and
Oh, yeah.
gentle to us.
Yeah,
Right.
very much.
He had this massive amount of hair for somebody his age, very thick and dense. And we look at pictures, older pictures, and it was dark, and
Yeah.
my memory is of this white, full head of
Yeah.
hair until he passed away.
And he used to crochet his own fishing nets.
Yeah.
And he would crochet a skull cap for him to hold his hair in place as it dried, because it was just kind of that kind of hair. I have memories of that. In fact, I have some of his crocheted stuff.
Oh, you do?
You do?
Yeah,
that would be
a
neat.
couple of
That's,
placemats.
that's very
You have to
cool.
take pictures of
Yeah,
it.
you have
to
Yeah,
take
I've
picture
never
and send it.
Send
I
it.
don't remember seeing that.
Mom gave it to me years ago.
She liked you.
She
better.
liked you
She-
better.
I got a picture of Dad and me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Really?
Well, we don't
Loved it.
know when they lived in Norway.
Yeah.
Where did they live?
Right.
Was
Was the
it
climate kind of
out
the
in
same?
the
Yeah.
woods kind of thing that was just normal for him? We don't
We
know.
just don't know,
We don't
right?
know.
I wish we did, but my great grandma died when when I was 21. They were younger, and you're not thinking of those things yet, to ask.
Yeah.
But we know we are a family of the North. That our relatives came from northern climes, because they're all drawn to
I
this.
actually have, and I forgot to bring them along, but I'll have to get pictures of documents that came over with them from Norway. So they're written in Norwegian, so I don't
Yeah.
know them. But somebody had written Ralph's vaccination
Oh, that's
papers
cool.
and maybe a birth certificate. I don't remember what they are, but I'm like, oh, these are really old.
Yeah.
So it would be fun to try and see if we can translate what it
Yeah.
says on them, but I can get pictures of some of that
That'd be
too.
great to send pictures of that to us. So the house was off of Alder Circle, and it's really the first property off of Little Trout of the river going into Alder Lake. And we should have gotten the fire number this morning, but I can get that. And then the Broken Knuckle, as I said, was on the corner of 51 and Bakken
Bakken.
Road. And the business no longer exists, but it was a very important business to a lot of teenagers.
And that's what counts.
For a lot of decades. And I was saying to the sisters about how at that time when June and Swede were running that, it was the time when people's mothers came for the summer with the kids. So there were lots and lots of teenagers up here.
And Swede did like fishing aside from his business, you were indicating, and
Well, I think that was more recreational. He just liked to fish.
any other outdoor activities?
Is he a
Did
hunter?
I do believe he hunted, but I don't
Don't know.
have
much,
stories
but
about
he and Dad, our father was definitely an outdoor hunter fisherman,
Yeah.
so if they did, they would have done that together when we were up here.
Right. Yeah, I just see pictures of
A lot of summertime
Yeah.
pictures, yeah.
Grandpa with fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have memories of your mother and father talking about when the property was getting fixed up and they were working on it?
All of that era kind of blends together. Just, that they were living in Milwaukee going to college, but they came up then for some time in the summer.
Maybe summer when school.
But
was
I don't
up.
know for how long, for those were such early
But
years.
remember, Dad's dad, Grandpa,
Yeah.
was in some of those pictures.
Right.
So they were definite Milwaukee people, so they must have come up for a
To help
vacation
out, yeah.
all together, huh? For
Well-
Pa to help.
Yeah, because by 52, our parents lived up here. That's when they lived on Lake
That's right.
Thompson
Yeah.
in
Rhinelander,
Rhinelander.
yeah.
So they lived up here, and that's when
Would have come up
our
to
other
that.
grandparents started coming up on the train.
Oh, okay.
But I also remember that the first time our father came to the Northwoods, he said he was about 16, because that was Depression era, and his parents didn't have money and to go on vacation. And he said the first time they came up, he couldn't sleep because it was so quiet. No street lights. So that was kind of interesting. So yeah, during these early 50 to 52, I'm sure they came up in the summer, and that's when that remodeling was happening. And when we look at our dad's face, we know he was very young at that point. 21.
We didn't talk about, but we can, that Grandma, so Grandpa's first wife, our grandma, Gertrude, worked at cranberry bogs.
Yeah.
And we,
did?
yeah, there's a picture in here that we have
Well,
of
we've
that.
been told that
Yeah,
years ago.
our mom
Yeah.
I
told
just
us
didn't
that. We
remember
just
it.
didn't.
And it had to have been most likely the closest one to their house because she didn't drive. So she
You can
would
take it
have
out of there.
walked
Yeah.
to, most likely,
Yeah.
the cranberry bog in order
Get
to
it
do
in there,
that
Kat.
work. And I don't know if did she have other jobs?
She worked the the machine factories during World War II in Milwaukee
Yeah.
when the
remember
men were
one time.
gone.
And this is your grandma's in here?
Right,
Yeah.
on the far right. Your far right.
That's Gertrude.
Gertrude
Oh,
Christiansen.
okay.
Yeah.
And which you don't know which
We
one?
don't know
don't
which
know which
marsh,
one.
but that house is so close. You go out the driveway and you're almost to a cranberry marsh.
You're right across from Leisure Kohler Cranberry, so she may have walked down to those warehouses.
That's what we think.
Right.
Yeah.
All guesstimation. But
Yeah, that's all. But the fact that she walked there,
Right.
and the next cranberry bogs is quite a trek.
Quite a ways down
Yeah.
the road too.
You want that one out?
And tell about the name of the cranberry company.
Yeah,
Oh,
Eat
that-
more.
Eat more.
They eat more. Right.
And then we found that the
This is
tags of that at the cranberry place today. That was kind of fun.
yeah. They sweet.
That's our
sweet.
grandpa.
Oh, here's Swede.
And you said that had to be in 58, 59
Yeah.
because Grandma
Was
had
not in
passed
the
away
picture.
by that point. Yeah.
Yeah, you see a lot. Otherwise, it's usually both of them in a picture.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know if he worked with the volunteer fire department in Manitowish Waters.
I know, and
Yeah.
I've never heard anything about that.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything.
Yeah. Records go back that far. Who knows? Huh?
Yeah.
So, do you know if your grandpa was in the military?
Not in the military.
No.
Probably because he was a firefighter, he was
Yeah.
exempt.
Right.
Oh, that
Yeah,
could be.
you're
that
probably
would be
right.
my guess. Yeah. His father was in the military in Norway.
I didn't know
How
that.
do you know this?
I don't know because there's a picture somewhere. You know, his mom
Wow.
had 3 husbands by the time she had passed away.
They all
2
died
of
on
them
her.
passed away in Norway, but I remember one of them in a military uniform, and Mom saying, "Oh, that's great, Grandpa, so and so," which I don't remember the name.
So actually, one of them passed away in Norway.
Oh, the
other one, I think, came over. I don't know if they were married yet or not, or whether he just came over to prepare the way. But he came over first, and then Grandpa and Great Grandma came over.
So they probably were married at that
They
point.
probably were married. Yeah, at that era, they
At that
probably
era,
were
they
married.
were, yeah.
Yeah,
And then he passed away here,
he passed away here,
and then number 3.
and then yeah,
That's the only
and they were
one
all
where you're not-
Norwegian.
Yeah.
Just saying, you gotta.
So
put
her
that
maiden
in
name
there.
was Anderson.
Yeah.
Then the first man was Christiansen. Then it was Tellefsen, and then it was Eng. And her name was Sophie.
That's so funny. What a scream.
Yeah. Good memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have really good memories of her.
Was your grandpa part of a church up here at all? Do you know?
I don't know. They used to go to the Norwegian Lutheran Church on the south side of Milwaukee, and then
Don't know.
our moms baptismal certificate is from Our Saviors, you know, on 33rd in Wisconsin, in that neighborhood, which was Norwegian Lutheran. And
And then you
when they
girls
got
went to a
here,
Lutheran high school.
and
grade
grade
school.
school,
And grade school.
and yeah,
Well, so did our father did also. Mom
Yeah.
didn't, but our dad
Dad
did.
until high school, and then he
Yeah.
went to
And
South.
so then when they got married, then they were in the Lutheran
Yeah,
church
they were
and
in the
so we
swing of
went to-
things.
yeah.
And you girls went to school in Minnesota? Was that Lutheran school?
They
Yes,
did.
it
I
was-
did.
How did you guess?
Norwegian Lutheran.
Norwegian Lutheran.
What college?
Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato.
It's just a small.
It's 4 years
Now
now.
it is, yeah. It was 2
And where
years.
did you go?
I didn't.
You didn't.
I
when
didn't.
You went into, but you did your career. Well, tell about your careers.
I actually started out going to nursing school and quickly decided that that was not going
My
to
calling?
be right. So then I just got a couple of jobs until I had kids, and then eventually worked my way into IT for the last 14 years, and then just retired in February of
So I'm like,
2020.
how do you teach yourself IT
I don't
in your
know.
50s? And then, yeah, she's really smart.
Yeah.
That's the way it
She's
worked
really-
out.
She's really smart.
Yeah, they both went to Mankato. Bethany
Yep, went to
Lutheran.
Bethany and then went to Mankato State. And I've done a variety of things too. The two main things about me is I worked in domestic violence for 13 years, and then I worked as a counselor in school. And that's where I retired from. Those are the two things that mean the most to me.
And I went to Bethany for 2 years and took their pre-vet program. And then I got married after my second year there, and then went to MATC in Madison in their vet tech program, and became a certified vet tech and worked for I did a couple other things, but then worked for 31 years for the same veterinarian, and then backed off, and now I just do the books for that same veterinarian practice. So,
Well, it sounds like you're from a family of service.
Yeah.
I mean, you were
Yeah.
at Freighter.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. And both our parents were teachers.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so and your grandfather was a firefighter.
True.
So you've always been a giving family back to the community, which I think is really something to be proud of.
Yeah,
Yep, which they still both do. We all try.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what are your most vivid memories of Swede?
I always remember a big smile.
Yeah.
You know, he was just a big smile and the white hair. And I felt as a loving grandpa.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
good.
even though we saw him irregularly, I always was excited to see him. And
Yeah. And I
and
would
that was
get
good.
I told you.
abnormally large stuffed animals
She
every
did.
time.
That was June.
Yeah,
That
but
was June.
All these, and they were just big and gross, and they were packed with. They were just, you couldn't cuddle them. They were packed with sawdust, or like. So they just kind of stood in the end of my.
But they were
They were nice.
They were
It was
gifts
nice.
from
It was
Grandpa.
very
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's right.
So I just remember not being able to kind of cuddle. They're not like the ones today. Let's just say that.
And we brought great grandma up here a few summers when we were coming up to Eagle River. She came up with
remember her
us,
coming up.
and then grandpa would meet us someplace, and
Pick
then
her up.
and pick her up
Oh.
and take her to Manitowish Waters while we were up here for
Oh,
2
okay.
weeks. So that's what I remember too. Yeah, and there's a lot of only children, and so, you know, like in our families, we try to stay connected to as many people as possible. So these people that are connected, but not in the way that we've tried to stay connected, it seems really odd to us in some ways.
And Gertrude's sister
Yeah.
had two homes on Big Bass Lake in Eagle River, and my mom
Yeah.
would take care of renting those when we were growing up in the Milwaukee paper and put in the want ads, and so she took care of all that scheduling. So then them both being teachers, they had the summers off, and then we would come up to Aunt Margaret's place and spend 2 weeks. Well, we continued doing that all along. Now it's just down to 1 week. But our kids found out that we got to spend 2 weeks up here. And
Yeah,
they were mad.
they were mad.
But that was her sister.
So that was our connection to Grandma and Grandpa after they
Yeah.
were gone, was a
Right.
sister. And actually, our mom stayed, Grandma also had brothers,
Yeah.
so she had Uncle Carl
Uncles.
and Mom was kind of the caretaker of them down in the Milwaukee area. Because
at the
she
end.
was an only child
Yeah,
of,
they had only
they
children.
had only
Yeah.
children that were gone.
You know, right after the Depression, you know how people got married later, so they did have large
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you have those memories, you guys. That's really good. I mean that.
And do you have any thoughts about what your grandpa really loved up here? What
I think
might
he
have
was,
really drew him up here, or what you?
It's sort of like our dad. I
Just
don't-
like the outdoors.
Yeah.
He liked to hunt and fish.
Nature.
And that was,
I mean,
yeah.
Dad taught nature.
Yeah.
You know,
ecology.
a few years ago I went to Norway and with another couple, and the other couple had family that came from Norway too. And when you go in Norway, they have at the deli, they have all these ready-made sandwiches like all over the place. And I remember the other Kathy saying, "Oh my gosh, now I know why my family eats sandwiches, because that's just such a Norwegian thing to do." And that's how I kind of feel like our dad and our grandpas, they loved it up here because, you know, they were fishermen on Lake Michigan on the other side of the family. And they didn't own the boats, they were just the workers, you know. But they all came from those regions where
That's what
somehow
you did.
this is what you did.
The outdoor
Yeah.
hunting and fishing was
And Dad
Yeah.
just loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He loved all the ecology and birds and
yeah.
all that stuff.
Okay. Did you have any more questions?
In Swede, you said he went through 8th grade and then
Yep.
he eventually became a captain on the force in Milwaukee.
Yep.
So he's a Milwaukee, that he ended up as a captain, which I think must have been a really,
High.
respected rank
Oh,
to work your way into.
absolutely. He was also very involved in the Masons.
Oh,
And
so
was up in that, and we don't know much about that because we grew up conservative Lutheran, and of course that was viewed as really bad. So we don't know, much about that. But just the pictures that I think we
He
have
had
some.
there was something Mason to do with his funeral.
Yeah.
Yes.
What it all
Yes.
meant,
Yeah.
have
I
no
have no
clue,
idea.
but they were
Correct.
there.
But it was
a-
I can remember that
that symbol.
Symbol.
Yeah.
Right.
on a stand.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all I remember.
So he must have been some
Yeah.
higher ranking
It-
level, whatever.
And we know he was very social.
Yeah.
Very social.
Yeah.
People liked him. That's why they nicknamed him Swede.
Yeah.
Everybody knew him. You know, Milwaukee wasn't that large at that time. I mean, you
then
can
if
live
you-
in Milwaukee now and run into people, you know.
And then if you run a bar up here,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
Know
social
everybody,
kind
yeah.
of thing.
That
you
is
know.
not surprising at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman, it was always kids in the Broken Knuckle, and Swede and June were really good with teenagers.
Oh,
They were
that's so
great.
cool.
Yeah.
And very friendly and nice. And you didn't fool around, you know. You knew the rules, and they expected you to obey the rules. So it was run very well.
That's nice.
But there was one older gentleman that would come in when all these teenagers are in there, and I can't remember his name, but he wore bibbed overalls, and one strap was always disconnected. And he'd come in and he'd order the same thing, and of course, teenagers, we'd be gawking. He'd get a beer, and Swede would crack a raw egg into the
that
beer,
is so-
and he would
Down
chug
it.
that down. Then he'd say, copacetic.
Oh, that is so funny.
That's funny that you remember that.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to forget.
Yeah. Must have happened enough times.
I
that
know,
she-
I know.
I love it. That is so
I think
funny.
every small town has their characters.
Yeah.
Right.
know,
Do you know, I think his name was Amos, now that I'm
Oh,
thinking.
gee.
Of course it was.
Do you know how your grandmother and grandfather met?
Do you?
Shoot, I don't. I have often thought, how did these
Yeah.
two people get together? I don't know.
I don't have any recollection of that.
Where they lived, I don't know.
Yeah.
'Cause we know that my grandma's family, you know, they were very uber conservative, you know, just to put a label. Like they owned a bar, but the girls couldn't go in the bar. So I don't know how much her life was outside. She went to Girls Tech. Do you remember when there was a Girls Tech?
No.
Yeah, there was Girls Tech too. And that's where she graduated from. But she certainly wasn't a foo-foo fancy
No.
lady.
No.
She always wore pants and worked in the
Not like
cranberry
Aunt
marsh and the
Marcia.
factories. So
Yeah.
Do not know how they met.
how that all goes together.
Yeah, interesting
We
that
don't have a lot
what
of
we
pictures
don't
of
know.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have her confirmation picture. There's a couple copies
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
But
So is that side the conservative Lutheran?
yeah. The Norwegians. But remember, back in those days, the Norwegians were the pietists, and so they didn't play cards and do all that. So you got it from both sides. Whereas the Germans, who were more conservative theologically, they drank and danced and did all of that stuff.
Card playing.
But that card playing, ooh. It's so funny,
Yeah.
to say it now. And
Yeah.
And how much Mom loved to play cards.
she loved to play
She
cards.
loved
Well, I
yeah.
wouldn't doubt that she and her mom played cards.
I
Yeah.
bet they did.
They
Right.
did, yeah.
Right.
So you can see how a 26-year-old loses her mom, and then her dad marries shortly after,
Right.
which probably had nothing to do with how much he loved his first wife.
Right.
He just
Right.
was
Right.
lonely,
Right.
and how she reacted to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that changed
The
how your
dynamics.
relationship.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
very much so.
And it colored her world,
It
so that,
colored
then
her
that-
whole-
That's the filter that
Yeah.
Kathy got the information
Uh-huh.
from.
That's why I don't, I would never say everything in my brain that I know, or because I don't know it, and it's filtered through Mom's.
But it still gives us good memories of up here
Yes.
and
Yeah.
warm
Oh,
feelings,
always.
you
Yeah.
know. I just about started crying when we were on the property.
I
'cause
know,
like,
it's so weird.
it's,
That was,
it's not their house, but we were there.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
memories of it were
Yeah.
good.
yeah, that's really true. That was
And I think
good.
it's really good for you to know how much Swede was liked by
Yes.
Up here, yeah.
Oh my
these
gosh.
young people up here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because he was running a tavern. He just was very nice. and
Yeah, that
treated
is so
everybody
nice.
with respect. and-
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's cool.
Yeah. And I think that's why I got that feeling from him.
Yes.
You know, to us,
Right.
even though we didn't see him often,
Right.
it was still a warm,
Well,
loving
and you
feeling.
wouldn't have been, with our mom, you wouldn't have been allowed to express that.
Right,
That
Oh, no.
you loved him, or,
Right.
yeah, that wouldn't have been a acceptable
right.
thing.
But we did continue to
Yeah,
visit
yeah.
and see
Yes.
and, you know,
And he came down to see his mom.
yeah.
And
Sophie.
yeah, so we this is me, but so we had grandparents that lived up here on a cottage, in this cottage, and that went out of the family. And then Sophie and one of her husbands lived on Pewaukee Lake, and they left, and they ended up on 23rd and Orchard. Now, why would you do that? I don't know. And I'm always like, I want that lake, that Pewaukee Lake house.
So that's gone. And then Aunt Margaret sold hers.
Yeah,
I
but
was
none
like,
of us had money.
at that point.
You
we
know,
were
like
in
you
our
were
early
saying, when you're in
30s.
your 30s,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you don't have money to buy it.
So we just come up for a week
We-
every
yeah.
year on
Yeah.
vacation.
Because our mom always said, look, I'm an only child and I didn't get an inheritance, and you should never expect it, and you should just be happy with where
What you
you're
have.
at.
What
Just
you
be
have.
blessed.
Yeah.
And so that's how we look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I speak for
Yeah.
you guys.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Often.
Yeah, my husband thinks it's hilarious how we always talk about going to Eagle River and Bass Lake
Yeah.
like it's our lake. He goes, you guys have never owned any real estate up north, and you guys act like it's yours.
For that 1 week, it's ours.
And Gail goes, it is
Yeah.
our lake.
We get the
And
whole resort.
actually, that's where our parents' ashes are.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we brought them up there.
My.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mother's ashes are in Alder Lake, and
Uh-huh.
as are my grandparents.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that was a neat thing to do.
Yeah, it was. a
We
neat
just
thing.
knew and Mom lived 2 years longer. No,
No,
not-
4 months.
longer, just a couple months longer than Dad. But she was able to be up here when Dad's ashes went into the lake
Yeah.
in summer, and then she passed away in November. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
It
kind of
was
a neat
fun.
circle.
Yeah.
Yep,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Well,
That's about what we
that's
know.
kind of like what we know,
Yeah.
like we saw Grandpa when he came down to 23rd and Orchard to see his mom. And so then we have pictures from on the porch, of that era.
But it was really nice to be filled in with what you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
all
such
that.
a
That was-
blessing.
yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
So
Well,
much
what
fun.
an honor to get to meet you ladies and come
Yes,
up
it
to
was
and
fun.
help our historical society archive another person who made a contribution to this
Yeah.